All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. On behalf of our team, I want to thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Hiring for the Long Term, Attracting, Vetting, and Retaining Staff. We are so pleased to have you with us this afternoon. Before we launch and get into this webinar, I would like to first thank the Health Resources and Service Administration, HRSA, for funding this initiative and supporting the acceleration of cancer screening across the nation, as well as workforce development. And this particular webinar will be focusing on developing our staff within our cancer screening workflows. So as we all know, recruiting and retaining qualified healthcare staff remains one of the most pressing challenges facing health centers today. Workforce shortages, rising wage expectations, burnout, credential delays, and increased competition for talent all impact our ability to improve high quality, accessible care in our centers. Today's session is designed to provide practical, actionable strategies to help you move from pressure-driven hiring strategies to more long-term workforce planning. And so we are especially honored to have Christine Callahan serving as our subject matter expert today. Christine is the managing partner at CEO Consulting Group and brings extensive experience in healthcare operations and workforce strategy. She has worked closely with health centers and free clinics and understands firsthand the complexities of recruiting, vetting, and retaining staff, particularly in critical and off-hours roles. So we'll get to talk about that a little bit, what's happening in our centers during the off hours. Christine's leadership experience includes serving as Director of Ambulatory Nursing at FHP Healthcare in California, leading a federally qualified health plan in New England, and consulting with both startup and large hospital systems on strategic hiring and retention initiatives. We are grateful for her expertise and the practical insights that she will share with us today. So just a few housekeeping reminders. By attending today's session, we want you to know that you are able to claim continuing education credits today. Jumping ahead for the pool. So you are able to claim continuing education credits today. Information on how to claim your credits will be shared in the chat. Also, at the close of this event, we will ask you to access the chat as well to complete our end of webinar survey. So if you are here and you're looking to claim CE credits, please know that this accounts for 1 CE hour today. All right, so without further ado, with all the housekeeping out the way, Christine Callahan, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Welcome. I hope everybody is surviving. All the weather across this country has just been a challenge for all of us. What I'd like to do, even though these learning objectives may seem a bit dry, I'm going to moisten them up a little bit by, during this call, I'm going to talk about some real life experiences that happen in the health center, and I'm going to share with you some scenarios that may help shed some light on some of the staffing challenges. Specifically, we're going to talk about identifying what are the current challenges? How do we implement making sure that we've got good screening in place to make sure we have the right people for the job? And then finally, what do we need to talk about as it relates to retention? Like, how do we foster retention so we're not on this sort of this wheel, this hamster wheel of people coming and going in our health center? Next slide, please. We're going to launch a first polling question. And while Jennifer does that, I want you to think about your top challenge when it comes to finding and filling a position in your health center. And the reason, while you're voting, I wanted to just tell you why we asked this polling question at the beginning of this presentation. This presentation is designed to be interactive. It's designed to have you listen and ask questions through the chat. I only ask that you do not include names, but if you have a certain situation or an example, or you have a particular question, I would like to be able to answer questions specific to those of you who I guess joined the webinar today. Okay. And if you can't, if you're not in a position, if you're on a device and you can't weigh in, that's fine too. We're going to talk about all of these types of challenges, but it is particularly helpful to know. So for example, before we end the poll, just to give some of you who are just joining an opportunity to weigh in, sometimes when I talk to health center staff, one of the challenges that I often hear is I have so many competing priorities that trying to hire staff is one more thing on my plate when I really just have to get through the clinic day. That's often what I hear in the health centers. Um, or I'm doing patient care and my role is such that I have to be in the clinic and I'm working, but then I also have to try to hire people. And it's really hard to multitask, especially with those two things. And then it looks as if it's funny because this is the one that I thought everybody might talk about, even though the number is not high. It is sort of tying into what is going on in the area, and that is that there's such a high demand in your specific area for back office or clinical staff that you no sooner hire someone when they find another job that pays more and they leave. So how do we mitigate that? Thank you, Jennifer, for that, for that polling question. What I'd like to do is go to the next slide, please, and we'll shut down that polling question. And just see if I can, okay. And then, so let's talk about a bit about the challenges. So we got over the fact that sometimes in your health center, it may feel like a revolving door. And all of the challenges that play into that are related to, and we've all talked about it, workforce shortages. We just can't find the bodies that are qualified to do the job. Schedule preferences. We have found that there are several people that are reluctant to modify their intention or their work schedules, specifically related to evenings, weekends, split shifts. All of those things are a challenge right now to be able to fill. We're also in competition. We are in competition. There is an urgent care center opening on every corner lately. I've seen so many different urgent care centers taking over mall space, and they are starting, and they are hiring people. And then you've got your health centers, your free clinics, your hospital emergency rooms. There are so many different venues that are competing for the same people that it becomes a real challenge that how you differentiate your health center or your clinic or your doctor's office to make it stand out. And there's and then of course the burnout and retention. You know, if you're down-staffed, then it makes the other people or the incumbent people have to work harder. What that means is it could be that they are doing overtime or they're doing longer shifts, some things that will impact their quality of life and result in burnout. And then the final thing is credentialing delays. Every once in a while, there are some people use external credentialing services for primary source verification, and that can be a challenge because you may not get, you may lose a candidate because you're waiting for them to be credentialed. Next slide, please. So one of the things that I think is really important to talk about, and for those of you who lived through the pandemic, like all of us, the post-pandemic shift, the pandemic, beyond everything that it did to our environment, was sort of a thought shift. There was a shift in thought in the sense that many people got very used to working from home. Many people got very used to telehealth. Many people got very used to different things that we had to come up with in the pandemic that people actually liked, to be able to stay in their home and do telehealth or be able to. So it makes it much more difficult to try to fill positions where full-time on-site staff is required, which in most cases, hospitals and healthcare centers are physical places where people need to be working. And during that pandemic, one of the things I saw particularly notable was the MA salaries. The MA salaries during the pandemic skyrocketed because there was such a need for medical assistance that all of a sudden what you thought was the reasonable wage to pay just became very outdated very quickly. So as a result, the post-pandemic shift, the rising wage expectations, flexible work models, and job sharing. Now that's been around for a long time, flexible work models and job sharing, but it sort of did take on another layer. That and EMRs, like everybody has now pretty much adopted an electronic health record, which makes access to the EMR from home or from a remote location or from a device much easier than it may have been in the past. There's also job sharing. You know, if there's one MA that's working Tuesdays and Wednesdays and another one that works Thursdays and Fridays, they're sharing an FTE of staffing. That sometimes can work. And then one of the things that's a little bit harder to kind of understand is the fact that you've got what I call, and I've got some years on me, generational work shift. So it is well documented, I'm not saying anything out of turn, that younger people have a work-life balance and they prioritize work-life balance, work culture, the culture of where they want to work, and growth over stability. Like, is there an opportunity for them to grow where they are, as opposed to years ago, it might have been, oh, I just need a stable job. I need something that's going to pay the bills. Is now this shift, this generational workforce shift that is where younger people are looking for more. And then finally, and we touched upon it, the technology integration. And that's specifically related to people want automatic scheduling. They want to use AI scribing. They want to use digital onboarding. They want to use the EMR becomes a very integral part of everybody's day-to-day life. And not having that or not having all of the tools can create an issue with recruitment. Next slide, please. So imagine that you are starting a garden, which I know it's probably hard to believe with a lot of you having snow on the ground as we speak, but imagine you are starting your garden. And what do you need for your garden? You need your seeds, right? You need to plant your seeds. So what I submit to you for this is that retention starts with recruitment, and recruitment is the seed, right? So you need to find the good seeds, the ones that are going to grow, because if you do not, it will result in sort of that hamster wheel that we were talking about. It's also incredibly costly, and we'll go over that in a minute. And there is something that we're going to talk about that's called strategic hiring versus pressure-driven hiring. And we're talking that, and then hiring for the long-term fit. So back to the analogy of a garden, you've now got your seeds. Next slide, please. So you've got your seeds and you got to plant them. What are some of the key things that you can do? If you were planting a seed, you would plant it, and then there would be a series of steps that you would have to follow to making sure that that seed was set up for success, right? It was set up for growth. It's set up for moving forward. And this is kind of a thing that I have found for clinical staff, that they kind of understand that it is not checking a box. It is, how do I cultivate an environment where I can get my seeds to grow? And that might be making sure that you find the right seed from the jump, right? You want to find the right seed from the jump. You want to set expectations like, okay, how much water does that person need? When do they have sunlight? All of that. And I'm being facetious, sort of, but I'm trying to get you to kind of understand or think about the analogy in the sense of, we want to be transparent. We want to kind of make sure that we're assessing the growth of somebody or that seed as it goes along. We don't want to just let it go, put it in the ground, let it dry out, and let it fail. And we want to make sure that we cultivate it from the very beginning, from engaging, from planting that seed. Next slide, please. So I know it sounds kind of goofy to talk about it in the idea of a garden, but it's really important to kind of make that connection that a lot of the similarities exist. And the reason that it is so important to do it is just these hard numbers, these numbers. And for those of you who may not see numbers all of the time, the cost of turnover for clinical staff is just staggering. And I just included this, we won't spend a lot of time on it, but for example, some of this data is a little bit dated, but just because of the pandemic, there's not a whole lot of really good data yet on recent years. But the total turnover cost for MAs was about almost $250,000. And it was because there was a 60% turnover rate. And back to the original polling question, that treadmill or that hamster wheel that everybody feels like no sooner. I will submit to you, though, that people a lot of times attribute, they went across the street for $2 more. Now, that could be the case, and money is certainly an aspect of it. But I will also submit to you, back to my point about the generational shift, is it's not always money. It has to do with other things that are related to sort of cultivating growth and getting somebody really tuned into your health center. RNs are also extremely expensive, and they're hard. You know, during the pandemic, there was this rush, and we saw it from my company. We saw it a lot with the traveling nurses. They were just unbelievable deals being secured with RNs that were willing to travel to a downtown tertiary hospital and work for 6 months. And there was a lot of younger folks that were saying, okay, I make a lot of money. I see a city that I have never been to before. And those are the types of things that have been challenging for us. Next slide, please. So the physicians, we won't spend a lot of time, but it's a lot. It's give or take, it's sort of about almost $250,000 again, to get a new physician up and fully functioning. And those numbers are probably understated at this point. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the pressure-driven hiring versus strategic, okay? So there's cons associated with both of them. So the strategic hiring is the one that you're proactive, you think about it ahead, you have meetings in your health center and you say, okay, we're in January of 2026. We have a budget of, 4 FTEs of MA staff that are going to cover the evenings, and the evenings happen to be maybe 4 to close. Okay, so we've got that. And then you've got 4 evenings that need to be covered where you can't find people that will come in at 3:30, 4 o'clock and stay and work until 8:30, 8 o'clock, 8:30 and go home. So now you're faced with a health center where access is an issue. You want to offer appointments off hours, and yet you can't seem to find anybody that wants to take that particular shift. So what that means is some of us, and I know I'm guilty of it, is some of us just get up against it, right? We love to think of being proactive. We love to plan ahead. Most of us, it's in our nature to want to kind of anticipate what we think our needs are, but a lot of times it doesn't happen the way we want it. So we look and we say, okay, I've got Lorraine, who's an MA, who's unbelievably good, and she is getting burned out. I need to get somebody in here to help her, to take the heat off. This is what we're calling a pressure-driven hire. Sometimes people can euphemistically call it a desperate hire. In other words, and you've heard people in your life that have said something like, all I need is a warm body, or, something kind of trite like that. But it's sort of true in the sense that we get so up against it and we get so upset where there's a phenomenon called opportunity cost. It's what you give up for what you get. And it's sort of an economic term, but it works in healthcare as well. Like you have to start thinking, okay, I need coverage for my evenings and my Saturday mornings for sick visits only. And I need help with this. And so I get people that are doing it. Well, those people may be a poor fit. They may not have been able to hold down a job. There may be a problem with their credentialing down the road, their licensure, their certifications, so forth. So we need to kind of understand the pressures of the strategic versus pressure-driven hiring, and we need to come up with practical strategies to relieve the pressure from that pressure-driven hire. Next slide, please. So we've talked already about it. The pressure-driven hire is the person, and I know I'm talking fast because I always run over, but I'm not going to. I'm on track. So the pressure-driven hire is they give a really strong first impression. They're energetic, they're eager to please, and they're very good during your interviewing and your onboarding. But then all of a sudden, you hire them to work 3 evenings a week and a Saturday morning. And you did that because they said, I have childcare issues. I would like to do those hours. Great, perfect. This is a win-win for us. After the first few weeks or months, you start seeing their productivity go down, their motivation. They're late sometimes. They don't show up. It's a last-minute call out. You then start rethinking and you start saying, okay, so this person in good faith may have taken this position and they may be discovering it's just not working for them. And as a result, their job performance is affected. And as a result, it's a mismatch. So we've now decided that this is a mismatch. The role isn't what they expected, or the fit isn't as strong as you might have initially thought based on the sort of how they presented to you. So now they may leave or they may be let go within the first year of employment. Next slide, please. So now we've got this person that you thought was going to be great. And then it turns out that it was sort of like that firework it goes up really fast and then you see it fizzle and you're watching it happen. So what we have to do with some of the things that we need to think about, and this is sort of thinking outside of the box, because to differentiate your health center and to differentiate your facility, you need to come up with things other than money. And while I know that sounds counterintuitive, it's sort of part of the package. Not everybody is leaving because of the $1.50 extra. I would submit to you, and based on sort of some statistics I've seen on surveys that have happened when people leave is sort of, yeah, salary, they offer me $1.50, but the vibe actually seemed much better there. The people seemed really friendly. They felt like they included their evening staff. They had this cool thing where there's a rotation, so the day people every third week rotate to do an evening, so they kind of pollinate into the evening so that all the staff can behave as a team. There's good communication back and forth, and this, that, and the other. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because there are some things that can be done that do not cost money that can cultivate longevity or can cultivate or create a situation where somebody would like to stay, even if it's $1 less than across the street. So, but some of the other more practical things that we've all talked about is offering shift differentials for evenings, weekends, nights. Yes, that is definitely something that can be done. Flexible schedule. Now, this one is much more palatable because you can kind of figure it out. And if you kind of think about, I had a situation last week where I had an MA who was excellent, but she absolutely needed to leave at 3 o'clock to pick up her son. And the shift was 8 to 4. And she came through orientation and everything was working out great. And she was doing well. It's just that she really started getting anxious, and we saw that so it turns out that we had to kind of, because we didn't want to lose her, we had to sort of come up with a strategy. And again, this is one of those things that all of us as managers run into. Oh, if I do it for Susie Q, then I'm going to have to do it for everybody. And then it's going to create this whole big thing. And yes, that is consistency, and doing things in a standard way do make sense. However, what you can do is try to accommodate a particular person with things that are important to them. And you can sort of cloak it in that sense of, we like to meet people where they live, so to speak. So we ended up making an exception for this young lady. We had her come in at 7:30. Her husband was able to get the kids on the bus, and we had her work 7:30 to 3. And we then hired a evening person who didn't want to take the job because it wasn't enough hours. So we backfilled and made her come in 3 to close, which gave her an extra hour to an hour and a half every day. And it worked. So it was sort of a very good example of thinking outside the box and yet sort of meeting two people's needs in sort of a hybrid or job share or however you want to call it. The other thing is obviously creating some sort of a career path. And one of the things that happens with this generational shift is they want to see themselves in a different spot. They like to see growth in their job. I come in and I'm an MA, and then there's an opportunity to become a senior MA. And then there's an opportunity to become a scheduler, which might have a higher rating than a senior MA. And then you might be able to become a site manager if that is how your health center works and you have satellites. So, and the other thing that a lot of people have done is contract to hire, where they hire, they have a firm come in and they do a 90-day probationary period. The health center says, yay, we'll take them, and then they convert over to a full-time job. And then the last thing is posting the jobs in the right places, which we'll talk about in a minute. Next slide, please. So we want to attract the right talent. So now we've talked about the seeds. We've talked about cultivating the garden. We've talked about you need good soil. You need to put them deep enough into the soil. You need to have them take some root, and you need to kind of water them and cultivate them in a way that's going to help them grow in their position. So how do we know that we have the right seeds from the jump? Well, the first and foremost, and I tell this when I do webinars on job descriptions, is you need to, have you ever seen a job description that looks like a kitchen sink, that it has 25 things and the person gets sort of blurred when they read it because it's like everything but the kitchen sink is in there. So it becomes really hard for that candidate to know and understand what their day-to-day is going to look like. So it becomes sort of a challenge if you've got this very involved that you could do this and you do this. It can be intimidating to the person applying, but it also can be confusing to them because they want to know what a typical day is going to look like when they come and work for you. And then the thing that I think is really important is leveraging your reputation. People will look you up, your health center, your community area clinic, your freestanding clinic. They will find out about you before they apply. So that branding that happens and that sort of demeanor or the authenticity of your health center matters. And that's important. And using AI, all of us have really gone rogue with AI and sort of what it does and what it doesn't do and when it's helpful and when it's harmful. Really important to kind of understand that. We'll talk about that in a minute. Next slide, please. So paying attention to the job description is what I always like to do when I take a job description and I revise it. I will literally say, I might ask the hiring manager, in this case, it might be an RN, it might be the health center administrator. What are you looking for? What is it, the top 3 things that you're looking for? And 9 times out of 10, it's not necessarily initially their clinical skills as much as it is their personality, sort of that culture fit that people are looking for. Because as you all know, and we all know, is that it can be very dynamic in a health center when you've got physicians that are working that all have come from different academic settings, different practice settings, different residencies. Some of them are mavericks with the computer, and some of them wish they could go back to writing notes. So you've got that very wide berth. And now you're having clinical people having to come in and deal with sort of this very wide array of skill sets as it relates to all the clinical personnel. And that can become a challenge. So it's really important when you're writing a job description to know what it is that is important to your health center, the must-haves and the nice-to-haves. Your organizational values, like we put our patients first and all of the things that go with that. Keep it very concise. Sometimes that kitchen sink can end up being 4 pages long, which nobody is going to read. And then mentioning the facility, its presence in the community. A lot of people who have grown up in the community have a fondness for their local hospital or for their local health center, or they know families that have gone to that health center forever, and they want to be affiliated with that because it's in the community. So it's really important that none of that gets dismissed as you're doing this sort of thing. And candidates who know what they're walking into are more likely to stay. And that is a takeaway here, is that if they know what they're getting into and you give them the 3 things that they need to do, the must-haves, sort of show them a path of career growth, have them think that the vibe of the health center and the freestanding clinic or the office is great, that is somebody that is a good seed. That's somebody who you can cultivate and kind of work in. Next slide, please. So be careful. We talked about AI, and all of us have been exposed to it in some way or another. And everybody, 25 years ago, if you ever told me that people would be as tied to their phones, my kids included, my husband included, all of us, myself included, there might be several of you right now that are looking at your phone as you're also looking at this just to make sure you don't miss anything. That is our culture. That is what we're in right now. So when you're using AI, when you're recruiting, it is a double-edged sword, because a lot of times people put in keywords or they ask ChatGPT, like, what do I need to do to find a person that blah, 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 and you write it in. And what AI has not been able to do necessarily is assess the soft skills or the fit or the culture that you're looking for in your health center. It does not convey transparency and trust. It gives you facts and it gives you figures and it gives you recommendations, but it stops short of sort of those soft skill things that we all use. We call it our gut. We call it our gut when, oh, go with your gut on this. That's what we're talking about, is that when you meet somebody, because sometimes you can get the feeling someone is a crackerjack. They are awesome. And I have seen MAs who have come in. I'm an RN myself. I've done competency testing on MAs, and I'll get an MA who will be sort of middle of the road competency wise, but that can be taught, competency exams and people, but their personality, their ability to see things ahead, being proactive, that is that gut feeling that you say, oh my gosh, if we can make an environment for this person, they will turn into a flower. They will flourish. Next slide, please. So the other thing that is a little drier, but cannot be discounted, and I like to think of it as sunshine in this whole analogy that I'm using with plants, it's the sunshine. So the sunshine has to shed a light on the plant and make sure that it is doing what it's supposed to do by growing. So credentialing and privileging is our sunshine on that seed, making sure that it is what you think it is. It's the right seed, the right type of seed for the particular soil that you're in. And it matters for compliance and safety. It creates red flags, and it will, if you find out that somebody is not credentialed properly, it does not ensure a long-term fit to your health center. So you're better off finding things out at the beginning, obviously, than letting things go and then finding out that not only have you made a pressure-driven hire, but that pressure-driven hire also has risk attached. It has a virus in the plant, and that is going to cause a problem for the entire garden. So next slide, please. So credentialing, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this one, but it's important. Patient safety is fine. I cannot tell you the number of health centers that are going through, and they sort of have these wonderful credentialing processes, and it sometimes feels like it's checking a box, right? It's where they go to school. Let's primary source verification. Let's do this, that, and the other to make sure this person. Let's check their license. Da da da. What we forget, it's not checking a box. It's ensuring for our patients that this person is who they say they are, that they have the credentials to do what it is they want to do to patients, and that it protects us. It protects all of us. It protects the patients. It protects the health center. And it's regulatory. It's compliant. It is something you have to do. And it builds trust and reputation. Like, have you seen something where somebody's like, oh my gosh, they got the good housekeeping seal of approval. They're very trustworthy. You hear a lot of those little mantras in everything, in every product that you buy. And the reason that you do that is because certain things build trust and reputation. And that is sort of the foundation for credentialing. Identity verification, we don't have to go there. It's just kind of a thing. As far as people, how many times I have heard situations where a provider is not who they said, or their licensing is not, they weren't trained where they said they were trained, and do not have the experience that is on their resume or their CV. So it creates consistency and standards in credentialing. Next slide, please. This side is just kind of a cute slide, but it is kind of important. It's the whys, the W's, the who, the why, who, where, what, when. And you can read those at your leisure, but why do we need to do it? I think I already touched on that. Who do we need to do? We'll talk about that in a second. Or there is credentialing is its own webinar, truthfully, but who needs to be credentialed, where the services are being provided, what's the difference between credentialing and privileging? That is the number one thing in health centers that I see, is that people don't understand the difference between credentialing and privileging. And when should individuals be credentialed? Next slide, please. Okay, so primary source verification is sort of this very big term that everybody gets intimidated by, but it's basically making sure, you know how you'll go to the airport and somebody will say, I need your boarding pass and I need your ID. So you hand them your driver's license or your passport along with your boarding pass, or you give them your phone for the electronic, ticket. That is primary. So they are asking you to present something original to them, something like your driver's license. In many cases, they won't take a copy. They won't take a whatever. They will want the original. It's primary source verification is, I went to Boston College in Massachusetts. They want to know that I went there. So they have to call, or I went to Harvard Medical School. They will have to call, and sometimes it's all done online now. There's verification services online, but they have to verify that I was there when I said I was there, and that's primary source. That's not taking someone's word for it or having it on a resume and saying, oh, it must be gospel because it's on their resume, and why would anybody ever lie to me about their training? Well, unfortunately, it happens. So we have to do that, and it prevents fraud and misrepresentation, and it protects patients. Next slide, please. So red flags and credentialing, you can read all of them because there's a lot of them. The three that I want to call out that happen, that are overlooked, that I believe are important, are, and that might hit you where you live as it relates to certifying medical assistants or making sure licensures for LPNs and RNs are active and effective. Discrepancies between information provided by the applicant and what's received from their references. That to me is sort of one of those things that is overlooked, but if you are good at it, you can figure it out. It's almost like solving a puzzle. Like if something doesn't jibe, it's really important to make sure that you kind of dig deeper into the soil to making sure that that seed is who they say they are. The other thing that is a thing is unexplained time gaps in work history. And I do this all the time in my job, like reviewing CVs and reviewing resumes, is sort of looking. And somebody could have left legitimately to have a child and left the workforce and had a mummy break for 3 years and is getting back into it. Nothing wrong with gaps in work history. It just needs to be explained away. There cannot be big gaps in work history that aren't explained. And then the other thing that is sort of similar to discrepancies is when you get like a negative response or no response from a reference. That's always sort of a thing because presumably people are giving you references that they know are favorable, right? If you say to somebody, oh, let me have two professional references, and they give them to you, and those people don't call you back despite maybe a couple of things, that might be a red flag. Next slide, please. So now we're going to have a second polling question, if Jennifer can pop that up. And I'm not exactly sure how many people are engaged here, but this happened to me, and this was kind of a thing. I'm going to read it because it's a little bit lengthy, but Rochelle applies for a position as an MA. When she's asked for a copy of her MA certificate, she shares with you that the school she attended has closed, and she's no way of obtaining her certificate. Her resume indicates that she's practiced as a medical assistant for the past 5 years for a local provider. How do you handle this situation? So if you are at your device and you can weigh in, you can select an answer. The 4 answers, in case you can't see them, are investigate the school where Rochelle attended and try to find where to obtain a medical certificate, MA certificate. Call and obtain references from her employer. Tell Rochelle that if she can't produce evidence of completion of the program, you can't allow her to come to work at the health center, or all of the above. So the reason I bring this up, and is, and some of you may not have seen the pop-up on that if you block pop-ups, but either way, this is important. The answer, you could make a case that every one of those in their own is correct, but it is sort of all of the above. You wouldn't want to do one thing exclusively, but this actually was a real case scenario. I had a person who told me that their MA school closed. She called. There was no answer at the school. There was no forwarding. I ended up trying to do it. I was reaching a dead end. She had worked for a local provider. It became this very involved thing. So the reason I bring that up is because it's important to understand that you can't make some of this stuff up, like schools closing. Oh, I lost my diploma. When we moved, there were 5 different moving boxes, and I think the one that was had my MA thing was thrown away. It's sort of like the dog ate my homework kind of thing. You want to believe it, but at the same time, it's kind of like, okay. So you need to be looking at other things that would help you prove credibility, not the least of which is MA competency testing. And that becomes important just to make sure that this medical assistant knows what they're doing. Next slide, please. So we're gonna, let's see. Okay, so then a couple of quick things and then we're done is onboarding for retention. So we onboard somebody. What does that look like? What does success look like for this person for the first 90 days? Back to the seed, the planting, right? What do I need to do? I have to monitor this seed's growth for the next 90 days to make sure it's flourishing, to make sure it's getting what it needs to sustain itself and to grow. So you need to have something structured, like it's going to be watered twice a week. It could be that they're meeting with their mentor twice a week, that they're at a staff meeting, or that they do check-ins with their pod if you're in a pod situation. Clarity, mentorship, team connection, that all is important. And back to that generational shift, clarity, mentorship, and team connection is very important. And people underestimate it because, including myself, is because you're like, okay, it's a job. You figure it out. You go forward. But there is this sense of wanting more. There's this sense of sort of that unspoken, I want to feel the culture. I want to feel it's authentic. I want to feel it's real to me. And feedback loops, early engagement. If something looks like it's not moving forward or not growing the way you thought, what do you need to do to help it? It might be fertilizer. It might be additional MA training. It might be different things that you can do to sort of help this person move along. Next slide, please. Okay, onboarding is an orientation. It's the first step in retention. And if you walk out of this webinar with one thing, it's the fact that onboarding or recruitment is the first step in retention. It's not like you wait after 90 days and say, hey, they're working out really good. I think we'd like to hold them and retain them. That ship may have sailed by that point. So onboarding is an orientation. It's the first step in retention. And that includes, again, some of the soft stuff that I've talked about that is crucial. The warm welcome. How many of us have put our kids on the school bus or you're teary and you say, oh my gosh, they're going to a new school. I just hope that they meet a friend and they get a lunch buddy, or they can sit and have lunch with somebody. Like, that is the kind of stuff that is important to people. And this is the kind of stuff that sometimes is overlooked in the healthcare setting. But a clear schedule, technology and tools ready, lunch or dinner, meaningful work, and feedback. That's the circle. Next slide, please. So now setting staff up for success. And again, I'm sorry if I'm boring you with this whole plant analogy, but it is sort of important. And because of all the snow, I kind of thought it might be a good idea. Setting staff up for success. This slide is kind of cool in the sense that you could look at it, and if you walk away with nothing, these are the pearls that you would walk away with. Or that if you have a staff meeting at your health center and you want to just copy this and say, guys, especially if you're in an all hands or you're in some place or a supervisor meeting and you're sitting there and you're trying to noodle over how can we be proactive and strategic with our hiring, take this slide with you. If you take this slide, assess, start the engagement before day one. We've talked about that. A clear and structured orientation, role-specific training. Remember, the role is the job description, and it's the must-haves and the nice-to-haves, and not the kitchen sink. Competency checklist to ensure proper vetting, frequent check-ins, and a career roadmap. If you learn nothing else from this, this is sort of the package that what would be a package for success for strategic hiring and setting staff up for success. Next slide, please. Strategies for the long game, and we've talked about this. The long haul or the long strategy, as much as we all say it, is ongoing training and recognition, growth paths, and learning from our exit interviews. If you end up with a garden and there's a section of the garden that didn't work out well and it's failing for some reason, those plants are just not growing there, you have to look further. You have to look beyond. You have to check the soil, which means the environment that those people are working in. You've got to check to see if there's some chemical that is causing acid or base that is causing the thing not to grow. So, and the reason I'm just kind of giving you this is so you can kind of get the fact that you have to learn if something isn't working and somebody leaves your facility and you do an exit interview, you want to find out why. And nobody likes to badmouth, and none of us like to say anything disparaging about anybody or anything. But sometimes what yields is very good information on sort of how this all goes and whether we can change it based on what we're getting. And again, that's the feedback loop. Next slide, please. And then the final slide here is just a summary. So we're hiring for the long term. Just in summary, we talked about recruiting as the first step in retention. We talked about different things you could do to sweeten the pot, if you will, for recruiting. And we also talked about the fact that sometimes it's not always about money, that we have to be sensitive and mindful of a generation that is looking for more and that is looking for other pieces of the puzzle. And money might be one of them, and I'm not discounting it, but it is important. The credentialing, I know it sounds like a check the box, but it is important. We all want to know that the physician or the nurse is who they say they are, and if they're going to do a procedure on us, they need to be privileged or credentialed in that procedure. Strong onboarding and career growth pathways. And keep in mind two things. One is things do not have to get expensive. Like in health centers that are managing resources, there are some things that can be done that are very low cost, but they mean a lot. They have a lot of things. An example might be even a career growth pathway could be you hire an MA and they get, after 6 months, they get a badge. They get a badge that, like, some sort of recognition badge for either performing above expectations for a period of 6 months. And it could be something that is made up. It could be something that is a $25 gift card to Starbucks in recognition for going above or caught being good, so to speak. We have one of the health centers had a caught being good thing where if somebody did go the extra mile for a patient or worked an extra shift when there was a call out, they would get a caught being good. And it became sort of a culture thing where people understood that they might be recognized if they went above and beyond the call of duty, and creating promoting a culture to promote retention. Next slide. So that ends the formal part of our presentation. The final mantra for this particular presentation is hire smart, verify thoroughly, retain intentionally. And that is a careful That's a good mantra because that is sort of encapsulating this particular webinar. And if you do have any questions, certainly vet them through Jennifer or vet them through Tanya, however it works. And don't be afraid to ask questions and engage if you have issues that are of concern in your health center. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Christine. We have a couple of minutes. We'll leave the room open for questions. So any questions in the audience, feel free to unmic, ask Christine a question. Anything she covered you like her to share a little bit more insight on, this is your time. Okay, so no questions in the chat. Well, thank you, Christine. Just want to say thank you for sharing such practical strategies on hiring smart, verifying thoroughly, and retaining intentionally. So that has been my message and takeaway here. I just also want to remind our attendees today that by attending today's session, you are eligible to receive 1 hour of continuing education credit. We hope you've learned a ton from Christine's presentation today, and there's at least one thing that you're able to take back to your health center and implement right away. So also, we ask that you please take a moment to complete the webinar survey. I was going to say website survey, the webinar survey. The link is in the chat. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. We are grateful for the opportunity to spend this afternoon with you. We'd love to hear your feedback. We want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon and have a wonderful remaining rest of your day. And as Christine welcomed, please feel free to email your questions. We will make sure your questions get to Christine Callahan and she will respond accordingly. So thank you again. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine.